Hey guys, how's it going? So today I've got a couple of blogs to go over with you guys that have come out over the last couple of weeks actually. I'm a little behind on catching up on things. So let's dive on in and take a look at these new blogs about ships and roads. So this first blog here that we're going to be taking a look at is specifically about the modular ships feature coming. We did have a teaser about that recently that I did cover here on the channel. And there were a lot of questions, some concerns about that, so hopefully that's going to be addressed in this blog. I've already read through the blog, so I already kind of know what's coming, and I think you guys are going to like this quite a bit, except maybe some of you historian buffs are going to be a little like, don't really like that. But you know what? It's a game. Let's just enjoy the gameplay and not be so picky about the historical accuracy of everything, okay? All right, does that sound like a deal? Cool, let's get started. So one of the first things I actually talk about is the idea that modular ships have been a concept and something that they've wanted to do for a very long time now internally. Anno 1800 gave us our most advanced ship customization features that we've ever had in an Anno game. With all the different items, you could customize your ships based on items and everything. And then Anno 117 is going to take that even further. And instead of just items that we can put on our ships, we can actually customize the ships specifically to what we need them to be doing. So we can have a wide variety of ships without having a massive list of pre-built ships that we have to pick and choose from. We can just make our own. There's at least one new thing going into ships themselves that are going to be required, and that's going to be workforce costs. And workforce not just for building them, but for actually manning the ships and keeping them going. So you're going to have additional workforce for your ships. Let's take a look at this and see how it's going to work. So there's going to be three types of ships. A small ship, which is going to be called a pentaconter. The trireme is your medium-sized ship. And the quinquereme is the largest ship type. Now, this is where I'm saying historian buffs, don't start typing in the comments furiously. I know that, a trireme is a three rows of oars, and a quinquereme is a 4 or 5 stacked rows of oars. I know exactly what those ship types are, but they're using them instead of basing it on how many rows of oars they have, just a small, medium, and large. Okay, simple, that's it. It keeps it simple without having to have all this different stuff going on. And it just lets us start customizing things based on the size of the ship that we need. Now, the modular system is going to work based on the ship type that you have, based on modification slots. Pentaconters have 2 modification slots, triremes will have 3, and quinqueremes will have 4. One really important feature to know is that the number of cargo capacity on your ship is going to be determined by the number of slots used. And we'll get into that here in just a second, but that's something to keep in mind. So the different types of modules that we'll be able to add to our ships are masts, which will increase the sailing speed over long distances, allowing you to reach higher max speeds and higher speeds when sailing between regions. Rows of oars, which add additional speed, reaching higher minimum speed and acceleration with a smaller turn radius. Now, rows on your ships, just like in history, are going to be perfect for, short-range maneuvers and combat. A lot of, in the ancient world, when they had, fleets of triremes, quinqueremes, whatever, they would typically, stow, I don't know the word, but they would basically roll up the sails and put the sails away and use their rowers and stuff to maneuver during battle. They wouldn't use sails, they would use their rowers. So that kind of makes sense. Rows are going to be really good for tight turning and stuff. So it's going to be really good on like your combat ships and everything. You're also going to be able to have reinforced hulls for additional health points. Archer towers, which can shoot arrows in all directions but short range. Scorpios can shoot highly accurate and deal high damage mid-range, but only on the sides. So Scorpios will only be able to fire from the sides. Kind of think like, like Ship of the Lines or something, or, your frigates and everything from Anno 1800, how they would have to pivot to the side to make their firing. And then onagers, they shoot rocks. These are catapults. They have a really high range and they have the highest damage, but they have very low accuracy and they can only fire from the front. So this is going to give some really interesting tactical decisions on how you want to set up your ships. You can set up, a small fleet of, let's say, onager ships, onager quinqueremes, to use for bombarding, maybe the harbor defenses of another island. Bombard it from a distance and then sail in with your other ships to, maybe take out other ships coming in to maybe attack your siege weapons and everything else. So it's going to be really interesting how you can set up these fleets and everything. Now, we do have a really nice little image right here of the ship configuration menu. Of course, work in progress build does not represent final quality, so this is just what we're possibly looking at. We can see right here, this is going to be the Queen Kareem. Again, don't get picky because it doesn't have 4 giant rows of oars. It's just the name of, it's just the ship classification. Don't get picky. Down here, we can see the costs, your cost in coin, timber, looks like rope, sails, and weapons. And then your maintenance cost. So maintenance cost deducted from your income. And then here's the workforce cost. So for every one of these Queen Kareems with this particular configuration that we're going to have on the open waters, we're going to have to maintain 15 of whatever the lowest tier right here is, and then 38 of these guys right here. So we're going to have workforce. This is a big change for Anno. We've never needed workforce before to man our ships and everything. So this is going to kind of start having to calculate into your population and how many people you have and everything else, and how many ships you can sustain. You might not be able to have 200 Queen Kareems running around, just constantly blowing everything up if you don't have the manpower to sustain it. So we might see smaller but more lethal fleets and everything going around. It might be kind of interesting to see how this is going to work. And as you can see right here, there's different modules available for the Queen Kareem. Over here, we can see the different, types of where the modules are, and they get slotted into. So again, you could, mess around with this configuration right here, and again, like I said, like an artillery ship that just has, maybe 2 onagers on it, maybe some sails just to help it, keep up with the fleet and everything. Maybe an archer tower just for, just for protection and everything. So you could just kind of set this up however you want to. So this Queen Kareem could also be used as a cargo ship and maybe only put in the extra sails. And then you'd get 3 extra slots to use for cargo. Or maybe you wanted to have a little bit of protection, so you give it an archer tower, or maybe you put in 2 Scorpios. Put in 2 Scorpios and have 5 slots available for cargo. It's going to be up to you, your game, and what's going on in it. If you're having to protect your ships and make sure they can defend themselves, giving them your trade ships some firepower is going to help. If you're playing a completely peaceful game, you can just customize it, to have all the cargo slots you need. However you want to do it, it's completely up to you. And we can also save that right here, it looks like, so we can save our configurations and keep building those as we want or change them up later. So they do want us to know that there are going to be some limitations in place. Each module can only be built a limited number of times per ship. On a trireme, you can only build a maximum of 2 catapults or archer towers. If you like numbers, you might be interested to know that for a pentaconter, there will be up to 16 different combinations of modules, 60 for a trireme, and 114 possible combinations for a Queen Kareem. That's kind of actually pretty cool and everything. I like the idea that there are so many different combinations for all these ships based on what you need for your gameplay. Once you finish adding the modules to your ships, the cargo slots are calculated from the original capacity minus the used modification slots, just like I said. Each module always takes up exactly 1 extra cargo slot space. To ensure that ships always retain some cargo capacity, we have made sure that a certain number of cargo slots remain free and cannot be used for modules. So again, just like what I was just kind of hinting at right there, talking about based on just looking at that image we were looking at, you have, with this Queen Kareem right here, we have a total of 7 slots right here. If you don't use all 7 slots, you can use those 7 slots for cargo, but you're going to have a very ultimately a pretty slow and pretty weak ship. So I don't know if I would ever use all 7. Maybe, if it's just between a couple of, maybe 2 neighboring islands that, you don't need the speed to reach it. You don't need to protect it. You just need large amounts of volume cargo moved around and everything. They do want us to be careful, though, because once a ship has been built, you cannot modify that ship. You can modify the configuration in the shipyard menu, but if you build a ship and you don't like it, you're going to have to basically, I guess, sell it or delete it. and reconfigure it and try again, basically. So once you built the ship, it's done, but you can change it up all you want in the menu. So what about items? Yes, there will still be items that we can equip in our ships. For example, each of your ship can have its own captain equipped on board. That's pretty cool. So there's going to be specific captain items now that we can put on our ships that are going to have who knows what kind of, effects and everything. Maybe more damage, faster speed, less maintenance cost. There's all kinds of possibilities. So that's really, really cool that, the item slots aren't just generic, that there will be some specific types of item slots for things like captains. So really, really fun. I really like that idea. It's going to give the ship system a lot more depth and interest to it to see what kind of, the quote, best ship combinations and customizations are going to be out there. Now, the last thing they do talk about in this blog right here is just your workforce construction and maintenance cost ideas. And, we kind of touched on that a little bit earlier, and there's not much here about it, but they do, just want us to know that, yes, construction and maintenance costs of the ships change depending on the installed modules. For example, rows require more labor than just sails. Archer towers require more labor than soldiers. Archer towers require more labor than onagers and everything. So depending on what you put on your ship, you're going to need varying amounts of resources and workforce. So that's pretty much actually it for the modular ships dev blog. There wasn't a whole lot of information that we already didn't kind of glean from the teaser and stuff a few weeks ago, but at least we did get to see the shipyard build menu and get some more information on how those modules are going to work. I also really, really love this image right here at the top of the blog. Just that sunset and, the blurred out background and that gorgeous, gorgeous ship. I don't know if that's a Quinn. I think that might be a Quinn Kareem right there. Actually, let's see. It looks very similar to what we see in that image right there. Yeah, that is okay. That is the Quinn Kareem ship. It looks like with the Archer Tower and the main sail on, or the front sail and everything on the front. And I see some oars right there. So it's got some rowers and everything on there. Beautiful looking ships and everything, and I can't wait to see a lovely fleet of Quinn Kareems just sailing to go do battle with their onagers and archer towers and everything. Oh, it's just chef's kiss. I can't wait. It's so cool. What do you guys think about this system? Let me know down below. I'm really excited about this, honestly. I think it's gonna be a really neat system. Now, this next dev blog isn't so much talking about new mechanics, or, well, it is talking about some new mechanics and new features, but it's kind of recapping some stuff we've seen before when it came to the dev blog about the diagonal roads. This dev blog goes into some more detail about how the designers and everything figured out how to make it work, and some of the details on exactly how the 45-degree buildings will work exactly with the roads and everything. Also, again, beautiful image right here. Just I love that sunset. Oh, I love the coloring in this, and the wheat farm and everything, and the wild curvy roads. Oh, I just love it so much. It looks so good. All right, anyways, let's talk about this. So without actually just sitting here reading the entire blog, we're just going to kind of hit on a few of the high points on this one right here. One of the big ones that I wanted to talk about was how, farm fields had to be adjusted right here. We can see this image right here on how farm fields are going to work. We see the diagonal road coming up right through here, and we can see the farm field tiles are conforming to this weird layout. They're going straight at an angle, back to another angle, straight. They're just curving all over the place, and it fits in so nicely. They actually did this. They talked about this a little bit actually in the first dev blog about the diagonal roads and everything with the subtiles. How your square tiles that are typically found in the Anno games are now subdivided into basically 4 quadrants, 4 triangles within it. And they reconfigured the farm tiles to be able to fit on an angle and everything within those subtiles, but still get the full effect of the tile and everything. It's really, really cool how they made this work and function and still be as efficient as possible. Obviously, if you're trying to play for, max efficiency and taking advantage of every single little ounce of space, this is not going to be the most efficient for you, but this is not who it was made for. It was made for people who want to build a little less structured, a little less rigid, and want to have, some angles in their city and maybe, just a some curves going everywhere and everything. It wasn't made for efficiency, guys. I've seen so many people complaining that it's not efficient. It's not efficient. It's not supposed to be efficient. It's just supposed to be something fun and new and different for those of us who don't want to build. For those of us who don't want to build perfectly efficiently and want to have some fun with their layouts and everything. So I really appreciate that they went through a lot of work and they put in a lot of effort to make this type of tile system work for the Anno games. One thing I found really interesting in this right here was this image right here. They're talking, this part right here, they're actually talking about how they had to deal with, making sure the meshes of all the buildings and how everything fits onto the grid could rotate and still fit properly within the subtiles and everything. Right here, we see some trade unions from Anno 1800 sitting as they normally do with the 1x1 tiles and everything. But with the way the new system works, for some reason, whenever they would, whenever they started flipping it on a 45-degree angle, it actually, the buildings themselves fit the right way on the subtiles, but the road did not. Just because of the way the road mesh and texture was created. So what they did was they actually created the width of the streets visually, not actually, but just visually, the texture overlaps slightly onto the other tiles. That way, when you turn stuff on to an angle, it still fits the right way. It's a really weird little thing that they did with it. I thought it was that was a neat little way that they did that. It's actually something with Anno 1800 with the what was it? Train tracks. The train tracks in Anno 1800 always bothered me because when you would run a train track alongside a road, there would be a weird gap, that green grass gap between the road and the railroad always bothered me. I always wanted them to put in a texture alongside the railroad tracks that like gravel or dirt. Well, there is dirt, but it doesn't go all the way to the road. I wanted to slightly overlap visually so everything would connect in and look seamless. And that's what they've done here. They made everything visually with the roads a little bit wider so it does fill in any odd gaps. One other benefit of this is that I think it's going to make buildings and roads, stitched together really, really well. Sometimes buildings and roads in Anno games, they don't quite line up, and there's maybe like a pixel or two wide gap, or the road mesh, the road texture doesn't look right with the ground plate texture because there might be a hard line in between. There's always some weird inconsistencies sometimes with the visuals. So having roads that slightly visually overlap with the next tile should help buildings to better, stitch together with their surroundings and look a lot cooler. The way it's going to work is that only 45-degree angles count for road connections. All right, does that make sense? Only a single tile, single quarter tile, 45-degree connection works as a connection between the road and the building. So this building right here, it's got a single subtile connection to the road. It's connected. This one's got two tile connections. This one's got two tile connections because it has, this one's actually got four, it looks like. Yeah, 1, 2, 3, 4. Yeah, it's actually got four because it needs at least one full side touching the building and the road for it to connect. You can see that right here. This is why this one has four connections, because it's got this triangle here, and then it's got this triangle here. So it's got something touching it, essentially. It's got something touching it right there. This one up here will not connect because there's no 45-degree anything near it. It's all 90 degrees. This is a 90 degree, this is a 90 degree. None of that right there is going to work because you can't connect it. Now, if you drag the road up, at a 90 degree on either side of it, it's of course going to connect like normal, but you cannot connect like this. You would have to drag a little piece of road, probably like right over into this section or into this section. Just draw a tiny piece of a road somewhere to connect it up. I'm sure it's going to be really easy and obvious in game once we, can get our hands on it and everything with betas. and to see how it's going to work. But to me, this makes perfect sense on how that works, and it's a really clever solution on how to get angle buildings to work within their tile system. So that's it, guys. That is a recap of the last 2 dev blogs for March 2025 that have come out for Anno 1.17. We got a really nice little look at the modular ship system, and we got some technical details on how the grid system is now going to work, and how, roads connect up with everything, and how they overcame a few challenges. If you want to read the full dev blogs, those are down in the description below. I encourage you to go check them out. There's some really cool stuff in there. Hope you're looking forward to some more Anno 1.17 coverage in the near future. Until then, guys, take care.